There are so many incredible games out there that I can pick out of a group and say that they are clearly my favourite. An experience from the moment go, you could tell that there's going to be something special from its presentation, gameplay, environmental storytelling and narrative. The first hour of a game for many is the most important when it comes to selling that player on the experience and introducing the game's world to them as a whole. This should teach the player everything they need to know going forward within the first few moments of a video game. But a word such as that, teach, can have so many connotations and differ between individuals. Do I mean teach as in materialize the gameplay mechanics step by step of the available actions and mechanics of the game itself, and hand-holding the player until they're ready to walk on their own? Is it to teach the player of the brand new world's laws and aesthetics? Introduce them to what they may come across and what they may have to fight in the future, allowing them to dip their toes in the shallow end of the pool before they dive right in. Very similar to a blurb or a cover art of a book, you're being enticed and sold into a new world. So surely, rightly so, every game needs to open with a banger intro that stands true for what the game believes in, but also sells and introduces a player into a brand new experience. I've been sitting on this video now for quite a while, and originally I just wanted to talk about a few favourite intros out there of mine, from the likes of Dead Space 2 on how aggressive and wild it is, but also allows you to instantly get into the sequel without having to worry about too much build up as you've already played the first game, or Wind Waker, which introduces a totally different side of Zelda, allowing you to focus on a story narrative from the eyes of a small child in a brand new visual style for the franchise. And there are many others out there as well. The Last of Us, Force Unleashed, Hotline Miami, Animal Crossing Wild World. There are so many simple and different intros out there that I could gush about all day long. But then I thought about it and thought, hey, why not just one up on that idea and get some friends involved too? Mr. Hammer, That Boy Aqua, infamous Sirhellfire, Cloud Connection are all here to join me as we all gush about our favourite introductory moments of some of our favourite video games. And I know the perfect place to start. How does the biggest name in survival horror reinvent itself? Resident Evil since 1996 has solidified itself as the survival horror franchise, daring players to outsmart and think 5 steps ahead of each game's offered challenge. Survival horror is a methodical exercise that comes with its own challenges. How much room does someone have in their inventory? What and when is it worth using bullets? And do you know what it takes to push yourself just that little bit further? Resident Evil has always had a slow but impactful sense of tension to its gameplay from 1996 to 2005. Capcom stayed true to the franchise's expected experience while trying to push the edge between pure action and the realm of terrifying horror. Capcom had a lot of pressure on its shoulder when trying to reinvent the wheel of survival horror when developing Resident Evil 4. But they didn't just reinvent the wheel, they built the whole goddamn wagon and brought the industry along with it. Resident Evil 4 truly had so much to prove, and the eyes of the industry were on it at every single moment, and Capcom was just about to unveil the next generation of survival horror and action, and holy cow, did they do it with a boom. Resident Evil 4 opens up to a small introduction of our now older and more experienced Leon Kennedy, being driven through a misty, damp and isolated woods, on a mission to find out and look for the president's missing daughter, Ashley Graham. Clearly lost and driving around in circles at this point, Leon opts to take a look in a nearby cabin, see if anyone is around and ask for directions. And just like that, you enter a brand new world of survival horror. Resident Evil to this point is no stranger to putting the player under high pressure from the first moment of an intro. But all of this high pressure tension is usually saved for cutscenes. Stars running from dogs through the Arkley Mountains, Leon and Claire driving through Raccoon City with a zombie in the backseat, Jill being chased by Nemesis, Claire outrunning helicopters, and civilians drinking in a pub very quickly being overrun by zombies before they can even catch a breath. And despite survival horror being known for its slow tension and build of gameplay, Capcom has never shielded away from the idea of hitting that ground running. So it was very odd when this game was jazzed up to be the next incarnation of Resident Evil, and all it did was simply ask you to walk. The slow-paced walk towards that house in the first playthrough for any experienced Resident Evil player could be extremely jarring. But we're trained to this kind of environment when it comes to survival horror, so what are we expecting when we open that door? What monsters are we going to encounter, and what is this next generation experience going to do to flip the genre on its head? As you enter the cabin, you're then face to face with not a monster, a human being. A sign in most Resident Evil games, a sign of help and hope. So you drop your guard, and as does Leon, and then you are attacked by this stranger and very quickly thrown into shock, and just like all Resident Evil games, you begin to think on your feet, act fast and take down the hostile. But just as it's over, the tension then continues to build to the point of panic. People start to surround the cabin and you must look for a way out. Either you could take the downstairs window and shoot your way out, but Capcom naturally chooses to lead the player to the top floor, where you learn a very important mechanic that you will need to hold on to throughout the entire runtime of Resident Evil 4. Leon this time around is experienced and pretty athletic, and can jump from rooftops and out of windows, and allowing the player to take on enemies with a new understanding of speed, and Resident Evil 4 wishes you to act with that speed. Taking out the ambushes and clearing the area, you begin to wonder, is that really all they have? But no. It's only the start. Capcom now take this opportunity to lead you through now the most atmospheric forest you can ever come across in the industry. Here you learn the importance of searching for loot, keeping an eye out for traps, and the valuable impact of shooting birds and breaking crates for other hidden rewards. This is a simple introduction to a key aspect of this new third-person action horror genre. A simple but important thing to note is how the game uses this moment to build on the world as well, without ever breaking the immersion and making you remember you're just playing a video game. As far as you, the player, are aware, you're still very much being stalked, and the ambushes are still watching you unseen from the trees. And despite this high tension still, this is only the calm before the storm, and oh boy, there's a storm coming. After a short intense hike, you then come across the village. A village full of people. A village that should be a light at the end of a dark tunnel. And as Leon watches nearby, hidden by a tree, you notice something that tells you that this is a brand new type of enemy for the franchise. A franchise that's built on the shoulders of undead and mutants that are so unmatched. You learn that the next generation is so human. Men and women working, talking, pushing wheelbarrows, filling buckets with water to feed the cattle, transporting hay around the village, farm life like chickens clucking and freely roaming without an ounce of fear. A sense of normality despite what you've just experienced. All while that forced normality continues though. One of the men who drove you here is now hanging and burning with his eyes pulled from their sockets. Whatever you do next, it needs to be the correct move. Knowing full well you're about to enter this village, you begin to wonder if killing those stragglers on the way in was ever worth it. Maybe the key of that introductory path was a test of ammo conservation. Either way, you're now beginning to approach the village. Confident in your stride, not like you have much choice anyway, you begin to approach the people who inhabit this fresh hell, counting them off one by one, knowing that you can definitely take out a few here. As you draw near, they turn to you and drop their tools on the ground, ceasing to focus on their work and now focusing on their new objective. Kill the intruder. And that intruder is you. At first it is all controlled, taking those down that you saw at the start, taking them down with distant shots to the head with a mixture of both body and leg shots. The tension is at a steady level, taking shots, moving where you need to, and you begin like you're actually taking back control, and you may get out of this in one piece. But then before you even have a chance to think, way more villagers turn up, screaming, weapons in hand, and drawing in on the player. The tension and the atmosphere is building now to a never-ending game of what seems like cat and mouse. Now surrounded and running low on ammo, your only way forward now is to remember what you learned on your way in. Look around for crates, look around for valuables, and see what you can scavenge. The sound design is brilliant here, a pulsing sense of dread, leeching ever closer, knowing that it's only a matter of time before they get to you. As you move around the village looking for ammo, you enter a building and suddenly, another cutscene. Leon slams the door shut, blocking it closed with a cabinet. Panic as villagers communicate and continue to draw you out. Instead of you, the experienced Resident Evil player, being on top and controlling the undead, you are now the one being controlled by the villagers, and you're now the spider being trapped under the glass exactly where they want you. Grabbing ladders and taken to the high ground, and then you see it. They pull out the chainsaw, and only building in numbers, and the cinematography here is beautiful. Shaky cam used to its full effect and allowing you to remember you're completely surrounded, and it's only a matter of time, and that is until you discover something very useful. You discover a useful shotgun ready to be taken, and the only thing you have left that could change the tide of your doom. A sign given from Capcom and a reminder that you are Leon Kennedy. You know what you're doing and you're experienced, so take that shotgun and fight back. There is a pure blind panic that would come from anyone who's played this the first time round, but then the second you see that shotgun, you know exactly what you need to do. A shotgun and a grenade in hand and more ammo, you're now on a fair playing field. Enemies keep coming and this intensity is at a point at an unending hell. The shotgun finally allows you to have that push and break away from the crowds, get out of that building, and allows you to put some distance between you and your inevitable death. Taking down the chainsaw man and shooting as many villagers as you can. It seems unending, it seems like they're going to surround you, and it seems like eventually you're just going to run out of ammo again. As the villagers ever draw closer, you begin to realise that maybe this is the end, and maybe you're doing something wrong, and maybe...
Oh, la campana. Es hora de rezar. Tenemos que irnos.
Just like that, they drop all of their weapons, and all fall silent. And all leaving one by one in an almost trance-like state. Now is all calm, and we are now well acquainted with the modern world of survival horror.
Where's everyone going? Bingo?
What an incredible intro. And it remains timeless in its sense of panic, an intro that the franchise continues to mimic all the way to this day. The perfect way to teach the player that when all seems lost, you can always find a way to succeed. Fuck yeah.
Holy fuck. Okay. People nowadays are always strict for time. We have so much stimulus and such little free time that we find ourselves pickier and pickier about what we invest our time into. When it comes to videos, 30% of you have probably clicked off already. And for games, this lack of retention is paralleled. Some are content with finishing a game even if it isn't great, but I believe most will drop or refund something if it doesn't capture them and hook them in right away. That's why I'm often baffled at the number of games that eventually get really good, but only after the establishing hours. The first hour, hell, even 15 minutes set the tone for the entire experience, and if that opening isn't strong, you'll lose players that could have been head over heels for your game. We're at a point now where it's so easy to find a 10 out of 10 game that if a game doesn't scratch anything close to an 8, I can see why you'd move on. So why don't we take a look at one of the most masterfully crafted openings to one of the most masterfully crafted video games, Batman Arkham Asylum. As I'm sure many of you know, Arkham Asylum did a lot to break the mold and tradition of superhero games being bad. Yes, we had a few exceptions like Spider-Man 2, but really, this was the first superhero game to be through and through excellent, which isn't normal. At the time of this game's release, a good superhero game that stood on its own merits was certainly not normal, and neither is this introduction. It begins with Batman barreling through the Gotham streets in the Batmobile with an oddly submissive Joker in the car. It's as if there was a whole game's worth of a battle between the two that took place prior, but we aren't there. We've missed it. Arriving only in time for the aftermath. That's not normal. Once we get into the asylum, things continue to not be right, as we see that the Joker is far too happy to be captured, even reminiscing over memories of those within the asylum that he previously harassed. But of course, the asylum isn't strictly full of guards and hook hands, but other criminals too. As we move through the labyrinth of the intensive treatment, a modernized and technologically advanced interior that offers a stark contrast to the Victorian muddied exterior, we see that the Clown Prince has no tools or gadgets on hand. Not even a fake stick of gum was keistered on the way in. Once through the long hallways full of prisoners, a little too excited to see a fellow criminal return, we encounter Croc, a beast that towers over everyone else and taunts us before being forced to leave.
I've got your scent, Batman. I will hunt you down.
This is something we see a lot of in this opening, the teasing of future events and characters. Croc gets close enough to hype us up because, let's be real, of course, there will eventually be an encounter with him, and this opening is full of characters like Quincy Sharp that have greater stories later on, but are here in the opening. The star cast escorting the leading roles through the red carpets of the asylum. We even see an appearance on the sidelines from Dr. Penelope Young, who is later revealed to be one of the primary reasons the Joker is here in the first place. This reveal also further contextualizes why she's so scared of him. After heading into the elevator once occupied by our skilled friend, we get a hint of the chaos we signed up for when the lights go out. But our expectations are again subverted as the lights come back on and the room is surprisingly not a bloodbath. It's at this point that many would begin to notice that things are going too smoothly. Nothing has gone wrong yet. Sure, we've had some unsettling conversations with a crocodile that takes shits that are bigger than us, but otherwise everything is under control. Even Bruce begins to question that, speaking with Commissioner Gordon, and as he expresses his suspicion, the rug gets officially pulled from under us. Joker takes down the guards, and with his partner in crime in position, he escapes into the asylum and begins an immediate hostile takeover.
Welcome to the madhouse, Batman! I set a trap, and you sprang it gloriously!
Before he can head into the asylum's inner organs, we catch up but are introduced to a new enemy, and ones that will reoccur throughout our journey. Titans. And right as we realize that this challenge is far too much for us, the Titan ends up having a heart attack. But we are still too late, with Joker escaping into the innards of Arkham, and our journey finally beginning. And we're finally granted the experience we were expecting. I'm sure many were not expecting the suspenseful and masterfully executed opening to continue throughout the entire game, and even throughout the series, but what I'm trying to say is that we finally get the fundamentals of what we want. Mr. Dark and Brooding taking down a rogues gallery, some of which showed off in the beginning and others left out, exercising the element of surprise. This opening, barring a few exceptions, shows you all the key players, ranging from the human characters, the half-human characters, and even the asylum itself, which is one of the biggest characters in the game. We see the transformation of the island here on a microscopic scale. Throughout the game, the island turns more hostile and chaotic. As the night goes on, the guards who have a secure position and comfortable dialogue eventually seek shelter within the madhouse walls. Within intensive treatment, we see this very arc, as the guards go from taunting the Joker to eventually running in fear. We also experience some of the backtracking present throughout the game, but here it takes place in the simplified straight halls of intensive treatment, before we end up in the more maze-like halls of the medical center. It's important to have the larger themes and gameplay elements on a smaller display here, because it can allow you to better distinguish if this is something for you or not for you. If you don't enjoy the first 15 to 30 minutes, you can be confident that you likely won't enjoy the rest of the ride, but if you do like it, it just gets better from here on out. But the rest of the game makes sense. Batman taking down the many psychos in the asylum is what we expect, but a major reason why this opening is so memorable is that it doesn't make sense. Things are far too right for far too long, and it gets better on a second playthrough as we now know the role that everyone plays in the story. We now know why Batman wasn't allowed further into the asylum. Each time we go through this uncanny jaunt, we notice the finer details, and we see even more that we may have missed the first time around. So much so that when the tables are turned and the Joker is the one escorting Batman into the asylum, it really isn't different outside of the physical changes. These two scenes, metaphorically, are the exact same. The Joker is the one escorting Batman into the asylum, the Joker's home court. In both cases, the Joker is in control. One can interpret the fear toxin-induced revisit to be Batman escorting the Joker into the very madness as perpetuated by his presence, but perhaps we're straying too far from the opening. But with how interconnected the asylum and the story it has to tell is, it's hard to not get caught in its web of psychosis. This introduction does plenty to answer questions. Who are the major players here? What are they doing here? What's the basic gameplay loop? But it opens plenty of other questions, like why is this happening? How can we stop it? And did anyone catch the game last night?
Hello? This fucking thing on? Hey, what's up? So, I heard through the cathode ray tube that we're talking about the best introductions in video games. Well, here's one for you. Why don't you try it on for size? Far Cry 3, Blood Dragon. Now, I know what you're thinking. Is Blood Dragon really the best introduction that I've ever experienced in a video game? No, absolutely not. But I'm here right now to talk about it because it's got spunk and that's enough for me. Also, I'm from the near future and
at low discount prices.
Oh god damn it, I don't have much time. Before you even get in the game throws you for a loop. Ubersoft takes over your Steam-powered processing unit and asks you which version of the game you like to play. But both options are seemingly identical. Is this a trick? If only we could get so lucky. Ubersoft makes it a point to fuck with you for the entire game. Anyway, let's get into it. You get some background of a nuclear war that's taken place. North America is left in ruins, and from the ashes of this once great country rises a new breed of soldier. Part man, part machine, but 100% cyber commando. You get sight into a chopper with two soldiers in it, Rex Power Colt and TT Spider Brown. Heading towards an enemy bunker, they must wipe out all Black Sector threats. Top class shit, full lethal sanctions, Geneva Convention restrictions tossed out the window. Long Tall Sally by Little Richard starts to play. It reminds me of this one time me and my crew were in Central America, flying to a jungle to stop an invisible extraterrestrial species. Rex whips out the minigun and he unloads a whole lot of freedom on these terrorist scum. I can't really share this full moment with you due to copyright restrictions, but it's just one of those things you had to be there. Rex and Spider shared the manliest handshake known to manliest men, and Spider jumps from the chopper to infiltrate these dweebs head on. While Rex lands the chopper for a flank position in the jungle, packing the guns, the knives, and the boys all in tight. Title screen.
America's freshest ice cream. Gourmet.
Time to actually play this thing. That is until Spider makes the HUD AI auto-start a needless tutorial session. This isn't my first dive into hostile territory. Press enter to demonstrate your ability to read. Oh, this is cute. Pressing space enables you to move on a Z-axis arc without...
For fuck's sake.
Crouch activates your quadriceps and challenges...
Just let me kill people, damn it.
To look around, look around.
This is not cool.
Are these tutorials getting in the way of your mayhem?
I'll spare you the rest of the details here, but this tutorial is more of a parody of video game tutorials. I already know how to kill sufficiently, these tutorials are really not needed. Anyway, after stealth killing a few hostiles and reaching the edge of the base, I'm finally set free to unleash some fucking mayhem.
I fucking hate tutorials, and this one is terrible.
Okay, now it's really time to hammer this one in. Kill montage.
Objective.
Rex meets up with Spider and they enter an underground portion of the base, making his way to a missile silo with an Intel mainframe. Spider works his black magic on hacking the machine while Rex covers him from waves of Omega Force brutes, aiming to take his head home for dinner. Spider fails to decrypt the mainframe. The missile is now in a full autonomous launch sequence, and it's up to Rex to stop it. The only way a true American hero knows how, punching it in the goddamn brain box. Mission success. The chopper arrives to evac Rex and Spider, but it never is quite that easy, is it?
Snapple is 100% pure fruit juice.
Rex and Spider awaken to Dr. Darlin bringing them back online, before an introduction to Colonel Sloan, the leader of this rebellion squad of Omega Force soldiers. A colonel they both used to work under, but he's changed, and not for the better. He also knows Spider got his plans from the mainframe downloaded to his cortex, so he takes him out of the picture, Bane style. Poor guy had a wife and kid waiting for him to get home. Now Rex is alone in this strange cave, disconnected from his home base, but he is contacted by Dr. Darling, the doctor who brought him back. Turns out, she hates Colonel Sloan and will side with Rex to take him down for good. And this is right before your introduction to the titular characters of the game, the Blood Dragons. What, you didn't think Blood Dragon was just a cool name, did you? These fuckers are real. That is the amazing intro to Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon, one of the most chaotic and over-the-top first 30 minutes or so that I've ever played in gaming. It's just so unfortunate that the rest of the game just kind of falls flat. It's essentially just Far Cry 3, bases to conquer, maps to expand, animals to kill, patrolling soldiers to take out. It's Far Cry 3. It just has a neon aesthetic to it now. This is the first time Ubisoft realized that they can just copy and paste everything that made Far Cry 3 great and apply that to every single game that they've made since. And that trend kind of started with Blood Dragon. Now, I can't be too mad, it is called Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon. It's an expansion. It's not really its own game, so I don't knock it too much. But I wish the whole game could have kept the same tempo as the opening. Make me an 80s action star. Give me a gun that I never have to reload. Let me ride one of these blood dragons and slap a laser cannon onto it or something. Oh well, it does let you do that one. Is it the best intro ever? No. But it is a lot of fun, and I can honestly recommend checking out the game just to play it for the intro. I don't know if I've ever recommended a game before solely based on the first hour. But that's all I have for you today. Hope I didn't interrupt some YouTube video with a bunch of better creators talking about better intros in gaming or something. I was aiming for reruns of Knight Rider or Alf or something. Anyway, catch you on the flip side. Now everyone repeat after me.
Fuck Ronald Reagan. 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 Fuck Ronald Reagan.
Good morning and welcome to the Black Mesa Transit System. This automated train is provided for the security and convenience of the Black Mesa Research Facility personnel.
When I think of introductions that have stuck with me, I realize how much establishing the world and point of view is essential for making a good first impression. Whether you take the first glance at a painting and you pick up on the colors and brushwork to determine the subject and how the artist wants to frame it, or you watch the first scene of a movie before the title card and catch all the details on the setting it wants to create. A work of art must establish more than just the initial plot threads in its introduction, but also make known the kind of environment you explore throughout the work. In video games, at least, few works have done a better job setting up their story through its subtle world building as the original Half-Life. In keeping in line with the rest of its qualities, Half-Life deliberately bucks the convention of other contemporary shooters to throw you right into the action. Instead of pumping up the player with a level that teaches you combat mechanics and possibly gives you the first bit of story information, Half-Life starts with the iconic tram ride into the Black Mesa Research Facility, where Gordon Freeman is arriving late to work one morning.
This train is inbound from Level 3 dormitories to Sector C test labs and control facilities. Current topside temperature is 93 degrees, with an estimated high of 105.
From the moment the player spawns on the tram headed to the Anomalous Materials Division to the fated experiment that causes the resonance cascade, Half-Life's intro is a masterclass in setting up the player's expectations and then ramming them into the adventure, flipping the script on you almost in an instant. From a technical perspective, it stands as a showcase of Valve's commitment to meshing story and gameplay together into a whole piece, instead of keeping them separate. At the time, 3D in-engine cutscenes were a bold, fresh idea, but most games stop the action in order to tell the next part of the story, which is effective but not innovative. Half-Life scripted sequences instead allowed the designers to create real-time story bits that can be shown anywhere in a level without breaking the flow of gameplay, and you see that dedication right from the get-go. While it's true that you are literally railroaded down a set path here, Valve never directs the player's focus. That's all in your hands. You are confined to what is essentially a moving box for the first 5 minutes, but within that box, you have full control over where you look and what you pay attention to. Perhaps you missed the first appearance of the enigmatic G-Man because your eyes are instead drawn to the cool spider robot walking into that pool of radioactive waste. The impact of these scenes might have been lessened if Valve took control away from you, pointing the players towards each scripted event with dynamic camera angles that capture everything so specifically. But instead, that sense of discovery, seeing all this unfold through the character's eyes rather than a perfect lens, is all the more heightened by putting you in charge. Now, one of the main purposes of a prologue is telling you who you are, where you are, and what you're doing there. And Half-Life gives you that, of course, but the nature of your character and place in this world means it isn't what's most important. You only learn that Gordon Freeman, age 27, is a graduate of theoretical physics from MIT who works as a research assistant at the Black Mesa Research Facility because the game straight up tells you as such through on-screen text. And this delivery might seem weird at first, as if the game is simply dumping that information on you without care, but it also ties into another brilliant factor of Half-Life's intro, that being the intentional banality. Sometimes it's easy to forget after experiencing the events of this series that for the first 10 minutes, we're just following somebody on the way to do their job. Nobody at Black Mesa knows it, but with every step Gordon takes towards the test chamber, he's heading towards imminent disaster. But before that, he's just doing his morning commute like he would on any other day.
Hey, Mr. Freeman. I had a bunch of messages for you, but we had a system crash about 20 minutes ago, and I'm still trying to find my files. Just one of those days, I guess.
Half-Life deliberately makes this introduction as mundane as possible, not just to jolt the player awake when everything goes wrong, but also to establish that the game's story is, or at least initially appears to be, a freak accident, and everything up to that point was just business as usual. Gordon Freeman is not a badass soldier trained for the day when a massive alien invasion takes place. He's just a research assistant, one of many workers at an enormous campus that just so happens to have the survival skills needed to make it out of the game's events alive. The right man in the wrong place, as they say. But while that humdrum routine does apply for the characters in the beginning, you as the player know that something is going to go down quickly. And even if you're going in with no knowledge of the events to come, you can almost immediately sense that something is wrong. One of the earliest things you hear besides the rattling of the train on the tracks and the voice of the PA system is the first piece of Kelly Bailey's soundtrack, Vague Voices, an ambient piece built on pads that are light and ethereal and that might otherwise sound peaceful or heavenly if they weren't accompanied by unsettling, almost discordant stings and effects that bridge the harmonies together. It's another way the game subverts the typical shooter mentality by not starting with a loud, bombastic song that gets you ready to fight, but a slow, brooding track that sounds melancholy and somewhat otherworldly, and while not necessarily threatening, it immediately puts you on edge. You might feel nervous about what's around every corner as the train moves ever slowly towards its destination because the music establishes a pensive tone, and also because from the outside looking in, Black Mesa is absolutely huge. This is a place that has a local transit system just to get around one facility, mind you, so of course it would feel absolutely massive to someone who isn't used to it, like us. It's familiar enough so that we can understand it, but alienating enough so that we feel distant from it, concepts used in a somewhat different manner for Half-Life 2, a game whose intro uses many of these same qualities to achieve a similar but distinct effect. So when we pass through every corridor that feels so lifeless and mechanical, as music that's almost but not quite comforting plays, we feel more alone than we should. When we see that giant radioactive puddle, we aren't just given a clue that this place doesn't always prioritize safety, we're also given an omen, a chilling bit of non-specific foreshadowing that portends disaster. But Gordon might look at all of this and simply shrug. He passes through those lifeless mechanical hallways every day, and since we know Black Mesa has on-site dormitories, he'd also likely call this place home. That pool of toxic goo? Just an everyday occurrence, an occupational hazard he might have learned to live with already. Gordon and the rest of the workers have a sense of security that nothing will go wrong, and that complete confidence in everything doesn't necessarily lead to their downfall, but it does prevent them from seeing the signs. When Gordon is told that the sample he's working with on that day is rarer and more unstable than what he's used to, and that standard procedure is going to be altered, he might simply take that information in stride. Yet we know better. We know that it means certain doom. And while for these scientists it may seem like a spontaneous reaction that nobody could have seen coming, we have been set up for a shock to the system like this. We see the world Valve has created for just long enough to comprehend it, and then watch it be torn asunder. The game stacks the dominoes up right in front of your face, letting you piece together how they will fall in your mind because you are able to see for yourself how they're arranged, giving you ample opportunity to study it before the first one tips over. And when the crash happens, it may be expected because the game has been leading up to it, but it is nevertheless a powerful, invigorating moment that marks the beginning of a classic, one-of-a-kind journey.
Hold it! You know why people play games? Is it to enjoy the emotion-racked story showcasing the colors of the human soul through trials and tribulations? Is it to drink in the atmosphere of the space you've been given through the art direction and generalized vibe of the location? Is it to fall so completely into a well-designed gameplay loop that you fully inhabit a character? Is it to escape the darkness of the real world, to have a moment of mental peace and escape whatever hostile force is sitting outside your bedroom window? For some people, these are probably true. For your homie, however, I play games to suppress my murderous rage. You know what game does that really well? What game hooked that dark corner of my being in its opening and throttled it for 6 hours?
What you got in there?
Doom.
I am a simple gamer. For all my rhetoric and hyperbole, I take pleasure out of simple things in life. And for this, Doom 2016 is like that one salad meme. My brain, simple fun, Doom. I can't even make it up. From the word go, Doom 2016 just keeps poking my pleasure center like,
hey, heard you like violence.
You've got my attention. Does Doom have a story? Yes. Is that what you're playing it for? No. You're here to slaughter these bitchy demons and look good doing it. Speaking of looking good, that demon's gonna look pretty good, splattered across the fucking floor. Hopefully, I'm conveying what my brain was going through when I played Doom for the very first time, because it's a phenomenon that doesn't occur with too many modern games. This game has introduced a simple concept to follow: murder my demonic kindred, then given me a satisfying payoff with the glory kills, which are just long enough to stand out between all of the killing, but quick enough that they don't break the flow of combat and take up too much of my time, on top of serving an actual purpose with refilling my health. And then the game gives me my baby. Again, I am simple, so when a gun makes a nice noise, yep. Now that you've gotten an actual weapon, it's time for an actual enemy in this little bitch. Scream louder. It won't save you from hot lead. This is the point where the game designers of Doom itself give you your first combat room. You've been drip-fed that good dopamine. This is the point where Doom says, nah, stick it in their neck. And when I say I screamed like this gore nest, you need to know it wasn't in this room, which, looking back, is definitely a starter arena to test you on the controls as a sort of final check to see if you need to retune anything or lower the difficulty. You even got the shifting in color from the deep, menacing red of the first room and corridor to the much more subdued blue, a chaotic awakening to a relatively more collected easing into being the Doomslayer. Don't worry though, you get to paint the room red with the blood of those underpaid workers from Hell's Maw. But if you ain't moving, they're grooving on your corpse when you've fallen down for a nap. So you better keep those legs jumping and that shotgun pumping if you want to scream for that good shit. Because between the escalating music, the faster than average movement for an FPS game, the fact your enemies are just slow enough that you can outmaneuver them and introduce your friend 12 gauge buckshot to their face, or at least stagger them just enough to execute the ever-important glory kill, it's a safe bet to say that the combat is quite nice. Would it be more efficient to just shoot every enemy? Yes. Do I care? No. I want to bathe in their intestinal blood as their brethren witness the horror of the Doomslayer going completely apeshit and ripping their fleshy bodies apart, tearing the very fragments of their pitiful souls asunder to induce a righteous roar so profound that you'll sprout offspring via mitosis. Like how I screamed when the title dropped.
Everything has clearly gotten out of hand now, yes. But it was worth the risk, I assure you.
Screamed might be a bit generous. It was closer to a suppressed orgasm. Moving aside from my fanboyisms for a moment, Doom 2016 is a showcase on steadily increasing the challenge for the player, whilst giving them new enemies and equipment specifically for shooters. I think there's other games that do a better job at tutorializing the stuff in the opening hours, but as far as a first-person shooter goes, Doom's pretty good. How do I clear groups of enemies? Grenades. How do I upgrade gun? Slap a Jimmy. Why random lever? Secret level. How open gate? Find colored keycard. How upgrade Doomslayer? Find dead red suit people. Find scary crystal. How to get more ammo? Chainsaw. How to kill enemy, but more efficient? Berserk pickup. I would like to briefly say that all of this that you're seeing is in the first 20 minutes of gameplay or thereabouts. But don't let me mislead you into thinking that it's just the quite frankly euphoria-inducing gameplay loop that makes Doom satisfying. It's also helped by the composer of the soundtrack, Mick Gordon. One day, whilst composing music, Mick Gordon thought, what if grungy, dirty, debaucherous synths and bass smashed with heavy metal 9-string guitars? You get a soundtrack that evolves on-side with the gameplay, becoming more and more intense as you progress through the hordes of hell, starting timidly, easing you into the fray. Then getting a bit more violent by the time the second major combat room hits. And then it just keeps rising to be more and more badass as the violence becomes more and more plentiful. But I'm only here to chat you up about the start of the game, so you can go ahead and buy Doom and play it yourself, because if you haven't already played Doom 2016...
Why?
There's a phenomenon that happens with these top-flight games like Doom 2016. You don't notice the time flying by, because you're having such a consistent and quality progression towards the finish. You don't really notice that 6 hours of your life has just disappeared until after you've beaten the Cyber Demon and think, fuck, I feel like I've run a marathon, because the action is pretty non-stop, aside from the, like 2 platforming sections and 1 little talky-talk bit. It's a fucking quick game. It's part of the reason that I will always take a shorter, higher quality experience than something that is more bloated and drawn out for the same price. And Doom 2016 is the walking image of a short king. I cannot stress enough that the opening hours of Doom are just a vertical slice of the extended pleasure trip. If you want more details, go watch my review on my channel, Infamous Sirhellfire. I think it's pretty good. There's an audio glitch in the intro, but I'm still proud of the editing I put into it. It's a good video. Let me know if this here video on Checkpoint's channel sent you there. That'd be pretty cool. That'd be real fucking cool. Anyway, you can have your video back now, Checks. I got stuff to go murder.
And I think that about wraps it up. I hope you enjoyed this video. It's something very different from what my channel is usually doing, but I thought it was just a little fun thing to get together with some YouTubers and talk about our favorite intros. So if you enjoyed, please let me know actually some of your favorite intros and gamings down below. I'd love to hear that conversation, and I'd love to be a part of that conversation with you. Also, again, I want to say a huge thank you to Mr. Hammers, That Boy Aqua, Cloud Connection, and Infamous Sirhellfire, who you could all check out in the description down below. I imagine you've heard of these guys. They're all fantastic YouTubers, and they're really good friends of the channel. I also want to say a little shout out towards Maya, Hairbear and Snugboy, who unfortunately couldn't take part in this video. They originally was going to be here, but things were too busy on their end, so of course they couldn't join the video, but I think they deserve a little shout out as well, because too, they are friends of the channel who deserve so much more attention than they're getting, so please check them out as well. And if you enjoyed this video, please feel free to subscribe. I'll do a lot more videos like this coming in the future, and of course I will see you at the next checkpoints. Goodbye.